Okay, so I'm going to do a sourdough. No, I'll rephrase that. I'm just going to do a gluten-free. I'm actually going to show you the sourdough after we do the gluten-free loaf. I find this, and I'll just rephrase this for everyone if you just weren't here, but this by far is our most popular class when we do class. It brings in many, many people from the public. You want to, because do you know what? If you are gluten-free, you know when you go to the shop to buy bread, it's expensive, costs so much, and it's terrible tasting. And you eat gluten-free bread after it's a day old, it tastes like cardboard. Okay, and so once you do and you know and you understand how you can make gluten-free bread cheaply and it tastes nice, you'll do this all the time. Now, I've been gluten-free, and I'll show you the two ways I do it. And one is gluten-free sourdough. That's coming. I'll do that in a moment. Okay, but I just want to do this one first. Now, this one's on top of page 3. Gluten-free bread with yeast. And I'll read out the ingredients just so that anybody who's watching online, they can hear it too. Okay, I've got 5 different cups of flour, gluten-free flour. I've used, and by the way, you could alternate and interchange any of these. This doesn't mean you have to use these exact flours, but I'll explain it as I go through. 1 cup of millet flour, 1 cup of tapioca flour, 1 cup of rice flour, 1 cup of buckwheat flour, 1 cup of besan flour, a half a cup of psyllium husks, a half cup of, I've got 2 teaspoons written on the thing, but change that to a half a cup of ground linseeds, and 2 teaspoons of dry yeast. Now, I'm using this is the dry yeast that I'm using. This is instant dried yeast. This is just from the supermarket. I found that when I originally put 2 slightly heaped teaspoons, it was close enough to a half a cup. I just think, just put a half a cup, and it just works. It works well. I've done this so many times. The only problem is sometimes when you do it with different flours, it does come out differently. So I'll just rephrase it there. Okay, so I'll go on here. 2 teaspoons of Celtic sea salt, 1 teaspoon of liquid sweetener, 2 cups of boiled water, 2 cups of cold water, extra flour if needed. Now, what I usually put, and I didn't put it on this one, but I use 2 cups of boiled water, and it's freshly boiled. Why do I have it freshly boiled? Because I want the temperature to be an exact temperature. So after you put 2 cups of boiled water, I write freshly boiled, because that brings this mixture to the right temperature that I need it. And when you put your 2 cups of cold water in with it, it works well. Note, different flours can be substituted, but when measuring cups, make sure you have full cups, not scant cups. Mix all dry ingredients together in a bowl except for salt. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. I'll do that first. Actually, I'll read it first. Get myself mixed up here. Okay, then I'm going to, in a different bowl, I'm going to mix my salt. And I've got a jug here ready with that, and I've put my tablespoon of honey in there. Just saves me carting it around and bringing it in. I'm going to put my honey in there. I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of salt in here. And I'm going to use and I've got Himalayan salt here. It's pink salt, but you cannot use either. Okay, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to put my 2 cups of boiling water over that and stir to dissolve the salt, and it'll dissolve the honey, which I've already got in there anyhow. And then I will add my 2 cups of cold water to there, and then I'll mix it into my flour mixture. So I'm going to add cold water, mix salt, liquid sweetener, and boiled water in a smaller bowl, stir to dissolve, add my cold water. That's what I will do. Mix well, stirring fast before the psyllium and linseeds start to gel. Cover with a tea towel and let rise for 10 to 30 minutes or until risen. Using wet hands, place your dough in a lined bread tin. Sprinkled sesame seeds before baking. Let rise for another 10 minutes or until risen. Bake at 180 for 50 to 55 minutes. I did this one for 1 hour at 190. So look, it's very 180, 190. It's not going to be exactly. I find the 190 does it nice, but 180 would be fine too. And you just need, and it does. Some of the flours just take up a different amount of water. You'll watch it, but look, it'll still work out. I've found that they pretty much always works out. So what I've already done here, can you just, Jessie, can you just ask Bernice to get the boiling water, and then when it's boiled to bring the electric jug out, please? Thank you. And what I've got here, I have got a mixture, and I've put them all in one bag. I've got millet flour, tapioca flour, besan flour, buckwheat flour. Now that was 4 cups, and I think I just grabbed a bit of everything else again. So there was only 4 flours in here. I've made this pretty much with all buckwheat. It probably needs a blend, but it still works. I've made this also with a different blend of, I'll rephrase, I'll leave that other till later because I've made a focaccia with the same recipe and I'll share it with you later. So it's freshly boiled. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll put thank you. Just leave it on the table here. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so what I do here, I get my bowl here. I just always mix it around so all of my flours are mixed. Because some of the flours do get lumpy. So it doesn't take long to make this spread. And so I'm going to get my cup and I'm going to put my 2 cups of boiled water, freshly boiled water into my jug. And I do measure this. I'm quite careful when I measure them. And the same with I'm measuring my flour. But as I said, I make sure that I've got quite, I'm not packing them high or packing them, but I'm just making sure that I've got enough flour. So I've just stirred that. You can see there I've just stirred that and I'm going to add my cold water, which I've already measured there. There's 2 cups in there. I'm adding that together. So I've got 4 cups in total of water that I'm just going to tip into here. And I'm just going to whisk that together. Now sometimes I do look at this because I think, it might need a little bit more. Because when I was doing this morning, I think, no, this will need a little bit more flour in it as well. I know what I do. I haven't put my psyllium in. No wonder. My psyllium and my linseed. No, I haven't. What am I doing? Makes a difference, doesn't it? Because the water came out a bit quicker than I needed it to come out. No wonder it wasn't working properly. Pardon? Yes. Okay, so I'll just keep stirring that. And that's not, you know what? It should have been all stirred in before. Yes, I'll go. Oh, well, I do stir it for quite a while to make sure it's mixed because you do miss a few little bits down the bottom. That's coming along better. And that's because I've given you a clear bowl to go through. You can see all. I think that's right. Now, can you see the consistency of that? It's coming out quite thick. As it sits there, I've made this even thicker and it still works. I've made it thinner and it still works. It tends to, it's a good recipe. I'll just get rid of that out of. I think there's a bit of psyllium down in there. So I should have stirred that through. I've never done that before, ever. And wouldn't you know, I've got it and I've got it on film. Pardon? Did I? Okay. No, I normally stir the linseed and the, I stir in the, mix all dry ingredients together except for salt. See? That's what I do. Okay, that's not coming out. This is a different whisk than I use. My whisk has got, that's not quite so tight together. Okay, so now I'm just going to leave that rise now for about 20 minutes or so. Who's got a clock or something? 20? Okay. Okay, I'll just cover it up. So it rises for 20 minutes. Now, I leave that going, then while I'm doing this, I prepare my tin. So what I've just done is I've prepared my tin. What I normally do is some of them have, some of the others, they scrunch all the paper up, which is fine, but I actually like keeping my sides straight because it makes a nicer loaf when you bring it out, it looks nicer. So I've just used, and I've learned this mistake. Once I went somewhere and I had my paper lined up in the tin like that, and I went to put it in front of everybody, and the paper went down underneath the dough, and I thought, oh, how am I going to get up? And that was the only paper I had. So I've learned I've oiled the side of my tin to keep the paper in place. That's really the only reason I've oiled the side of the tin, to keep the paper in place. Okay, I'll leave that there. But this is my loaf of bread. You can see it there. Now that, as I said, that had that, and you have to leave it probably about, it had still a little bit of warmth in. Now what did I do? I got it out of the oven probably about 6:30 or so this morning, or maybe it was 7. I'm not sure. It could have been closer to 7. So that's the loaf of bread. So it will be right for lunchtime. But if I had this one now cooked, you couldn't use it for lunch, even if it would be cooked just before lunch, because it's too hot. I couldn't cut it. Okay, so that's my gluten-free bread. But anyone want to ask, do we want a microphone there for questions? Just wait a bit. We'll get that online, because there's people who... Up here to Donna. That's the way Jessie did it. You've got to follow the example, haven't you? Okay, Donna.
If we were making that into, say, a fruit loaf, would there be any adjustments that we would have to make, or would you just add the dried fruit and nuts to it?
I would add dried fruit, but I'd be look. sometimes I haven't made that one into a fruit loaf. I've done fruit loaf with others, but not that particular one. Or maybe I have it so long ago I can't remember. You'd need to watch it and adjust it. It doesn't seem to... Look at your dry fruit if it's really dry, because some dry fruit can be quite old, and you need to maybe pour a little bit of boiling water over it, because it will take up a little bit more moisture out of your mixture, won't it? But that would make a nice loaf, a beautiful loaf, a fruit loaf. Put in a few yeah. But now, this is the point. How do I keep this one? I would keep this one, and even when Peter was there, I would cut it up and slice it up, quite fine, because it's reasonably dense loaf of bread. It's not really, soft. So what I'd do is I sliced it up, and then I would maybe slice it up and keep it out for maybe 1 or 2 days, or I'd just look at... I can't eat all of that. There's no way I could eat all that. But yet I like to have a nice piece of bread every once in a while. And so I just slice it up and freeze it and just pull out my slices that I want to use. And then I'll usually put them in the sandwich press to thaw them out. Or you could put them in a toaster. There's no rule that says you've got to have a sandwich press. But you can just thaw them out that way. But generally, look... And it does keep quite nice. It's not like cardboard after 1 day, like most gluten-free bread is. It comes out quite nice. So it's really, I like it. And I've came across this loaf one time, and I said to myself, I'm not going to put this. I didn't have this recipe when I put my book out. And I thought, well, I'm not going to put it in my book. I'm going to just share it with people, and I would demonstrate with it, because this is like one word. But I think I'll add it and I'll change it and I'll put it. I'm working on that one. I know it needs to go out there. People need to know it, because it's like you need to have the information. Any more questions on this loaf of bread? Use any different flours. Now I want to write, and I did have this on another recipe sheet, and I didn't pull the right recipe sheet for you. I have it written on another one. If I halve this entire recipe, everything halve it, with the exception of the flour. If I halved the flour, 5 cups halved is 2.5 cups. I add 3 cups of this flour, and this is the flour mix I use. Now this makes the beautiful focaccia. So halve everything with the exception of the flour. Instead of the 2.5, add 3 cups of flour, because this is the flour mix that I want you to use, and you need to mix this. This is a gluten-free flour mix that you can use. It's a nice one. 1 cup of millet flour, 1 cup of brown rice flour. Look, in a pinch you could use white rice flour, but rice flour. 3/4 of a cup of besan, 3/4 of a cup of tapioca, 3/4 of a cup of arrowroot flour. No, let me think. If I got that right. Besan. No, it's wrong. So not that. I'll rephrase that. You'll have to, you make a mess on your page. 3/4 of a cup of besan is right. 3/4 of a cup of arrowroot and 3/4 of a cup of potato flour. No arrowroot. I believe you can substitute arrowroot for tapioca for arrowroot. That's what I'm saying. Yes, arrowroot. I'll rephrase it again. 3/4 of a cup of besan flour, 3/4 of a cup of arrowroot, 3/4 of a cup of potato flour. Now mix them together. That is a good gluten-free flour mix, and it's a lighter one. When I'm making this bread, I'm making a very heavy, dense loaf. That one is lighter, and when I made the focaccia, I made it here for a program here a couple of weeks ago, and some of the ladies said this is the nicest gluten-free bread that they'd eaten, in a focaccia. So what I did is I did all the same which I'm doing now. I did like exactly half the recipe. First of all, I thought I would halve the complete recipe, but when I looked at it, I needed extra flour in. Remember, those flours need, because there's a ratio that flour to water. Obviously, you needed more flour in there. So I put the extra flour in, making it just up to the 3 cups because it's a half mixture, half mix of everything. Then I pressed it out on a tray and I put over it just white. I have a pastry brush. I just put some olive oil on it and I put on some garlic, some crushed garlic over, and I sprinkled with salt, and then I allowed it to rise. I allowed it to rise first. This was my second rise, and this was just before I put it out and baked it. Then I baked it for 190 for 30 minutes. It only needed 30 minutes. And that was just beautiful.
Is that the one, Kaye, that we had our first night with the soup?
Yes. Yeah, but I gave that recipe to Bernice. That's the one we had the first night with the soup.
What were the 4 types of flour for the lighter loaf? Sorry, I've got potato flour.
Okay, just hold on. I'll just repeat it. You want to know the names of the flour?
For the lighter loaf, what are the 4 types of flour?
No, there's 5.
3/4 of
No. I'll just rephrase it again. For the lighter loaf, you need a separate mix of gluten-free flour, and take 3 cups of that. After you've mixed those flours together, take 3 cups of that out and make it into your focaccia. So in that mix that you're going to make, you're going to use millet flour, you're going to use brown rice flour, besan, arrowroot, and potato flour. That is a mix. Not quite as much. There's only 3/4 a cup of some of them. So mix that together in a different bowl, and that is your gluten-free mix. It's for a lighter mix. If you want to work out exactly how much is 3 cups that you don't have extra left over, that's fine. But I just used that, and I got that out of a recipe book, and I thought I'll just try this, and I really liked it. So I just scooped out 3 cups of that mixed flour, and I put it in my bowl, and then I made this whole same recipe that I'm just telling you here. Okay, is that clear? Okay.
I think so.
You think so?
It's
Okay.
as clear as the night.
Okay. Now, I also, you could use this for anything. Like you said, you could use it for a fruit loaf. You could use anything. I'm finding, and some people, they said, it's just not working for me. It's just not working for me. And I looked at some people and say, what are you doing wrong? I don't know what you're doing wrong. And the 2 things that the person who could not get it right, they had a different shaped tin, which I could work. I don't know. But I think what it was is the fact that they weren't using freshly boiled water to get to that right temperature to give it because if I put my hand around this bowl, it is still quite warm now. And you see it activates it quite nicely. Look, yeah, still not. How many minutes are we up to now? Who's doing the timing? Good, yeah, that's fine. Okay, well, we could even do it for, you see, because it's winter, it takes a little bit longer too. We could also even do it a little bit longer. There's no other rule that says. Now I'm going to go over back to we'll let that rise. We'll come back to that as we're going through it. But I'm going to talk to you about the sourdough gluten-free bread mix. This is really an interesting one. And in here is my sourdough culture. Okay, that's a culture. Now, what I've done here is I've made it up into a mix here, and this is what I'm going to use for flat bread. Okay, I'll read it through so we can just get the basis of it. And look, I can email this out to anyone. It's no problem there. But establish or building up your starter culture. Usually what I do when I've given these classes, I give a little bit of this out. They have probably about a tablespoon of this in a Glad bag. That's what I share with people. Okay, so you have a small sample of starter culture. It may be 1 tablespoon or even a quarter of a cup. You will need to build the quantity of this up. Place a glass bowl with, this is my glass bowl which I'm using, but place a glass bowl or with a half a cup of water and a half a cup of buckwheat flour. Now you could use brown rice flour, but when you use brown rice flour it actually separates your starter culture, and you have to re-stir it. It sort of separates into water and flour mixed, which still works, but I've actually got so used to using buckwheat flour that I have this all the time because I freshly grind this all the time. So I've got a grinder, my own home grinder. Like Sam says, you need a flour grinder. Well, I've had mine for years too. So I'm using a half a cup of water, half a cup of buckwheat flour, and a half a teaspoon of organic raw sugar. Now, why do we use raw sugar? Well, it feeds on it. Now, and I actually think that my culture is probably a little bit flat because I've been away for a long time and I haven't used it. And it's not as virulent when you've been away and you've let it goes dormant. And it's been a little bit dormant. If I want to bring it to life again, I just put a little bit more flour in there and a little bit more sugar. So the sugar, it feeds it, right? So I use organic raw sugar. Oh, I guess you could use any of the organic if you've got Rapadura sugar or something like that, anything like that would work. Whisk and allow to rise 4 to 5 hours. Then add to this another 1 cup of water, 1 teaspoon of organic raw sugar, whisk, and then add 1 cup of buckwheat flour. Whisk until well mixed. You can then place this mixture in a clean bowl with a lid that is not airtight. Now, I like this lid, that particular bowl. These bowls are excellent because it seals it to a degree, but it's not airtight. You know that if I put that on and if I had water in and tipped it, it would leak. So it's not airtight. So that is my culture bowl. It's just like the one I'm using all the time. I've got a few of these and I interchange them. You can then place your mixture in a clean bowl with a lid that is not airtight as it needs to breathe and let rise again on the bench top for 4 to 5 hours. This now becomes your starter culture. Now, this is your starter culture. Remember, when you get a culture, you will only get a little bit in a Glad bag. You can take that home, and then you've got to rebuild it up to get it to this amount of culture. When using, remember to always keep back about half of your starter for your next batch. If not using this immediately, keep your starter culture in your fridge without a tight-fitting lid. Why? What does it need? It needs to breathe, okay? It needs to have just a little bit of air to it. So don't seal it. You see, if you sealed it in a snap-like lid, it would sort of... Look, you won't lose it immediately, but if you're sitting it there for a while, it needs to be breathing. Now, you are now ready to make some flat bread or a loaf of bread. Halve the starter. Now, this is the starter. Remember, halve it. And I'm not going to demonstrate this for you today. I'm just going to walk you through it. Halve that, and I would pour that into a separate bowl, okay? I've got a separate bowl. So I'll leave that there. That's going to be my bread mixture or my flat dough mixture. Half of this one. Now, what I'm going to do with this, with 1/2 of this, follow the instructions. Halve the starter culture. With 1/2 of this, follow the instructions under step 1. This creates a new starter. By doing this, you will always have a starter. With the other half, follow instructions under step 2, and use this to make your bread. So this is your starter again. Now, when you want to make a loaf of bread, this is what you've got. This is what I took out of my fridge to demonstrate to you. To add to this, I whisk more water, sourdough starter, and sugar in. Add your flour and whisk again. Whisk again. So this is when I'm going to redo that again. because I've got, remember this is only half full. Half of it is out in another container. So this is not as full as this now. So I've got to keep building this up all the time. Okay, place in a bowl and set aside on a bench and allow to rise 4 to 5 hours. After it rises, it should have small bubbles throughout the starter and should nearly double in size. It may need longer time to rise in winter. Temperature is important. 28 degrees is best. The best container to use is a glass bowl with a plastic lid as long as it does not seal airtight. It needs to be, after rising it refrigerate it. Now this is your normal feeding ratio, 1 part of flour to 1 part of water, or you can have 1 part of flour to 1.5 parts of water, plus the sugar. So, pardon? Okay. You can use buckwheat flour or brown rice flour in your starter. If using brown rice flour, it will separate into a solid bottom layer and a watery top layer. This is normal. Just stir before you use it and it will be ready for use. So this is my starter culture. Every time I'm going to use it, I'm just going to get I don't measure half. I just tip about half. I just eyeball it. I tip about half of it out. Then I take this one up and I remix it with 1 cup of, and I don't even measure out. I just tip now because I'm so used to it. And it doesn't matter if it gets a bit thinner or thicker. It won't matter. It'll work. If you don't get the 1-to-1 ratio, that's not terribly important. It will work. So then I've always got this. Now what I normally do when I'm at home, I nearly always get, after I've mixed it up, I'll always I'm just a bit fussy there. I'll put this in a clean bowl. I've got some of these. I've used these also for my kefir, and so I put this in a clean bowl, and I put this on my bench first, and then I put it in the fridge so I can wash this up and it's ready. Because I do kefir and I do sourdough bread, and I've got 3 of these bowls, so I rotate them whichever. So I've always got one fresh that I can use whichever one I'm using. So that is my starter culture, and I've always got it there. Now, last night I made up some, but I put it in the fridge straight away so it wouldn't rise. But now this is what I'm doing. This is the mix that I'm going to do, and I'm going to make into a loaf of bread or my flat bread in a sandwich press. 1 to 1.5 cups of sourdough starter. So I've taken half of this out of this bowl and I've put it in a separate bowl. So in that separate bowl is my sourdough starter. And if I don't measure it out, but it's round about 1 cup to 1.5 cups, right? That's about that. I'll add 1.5 cups of water. I will add 1.5 to 2.5 cups of gluten-free flour, and you can use any blend whatsoever you want. Some flours absorb more liquid, so adjust if needed. This recipe works as a batter consistency, but also a thick batter consistency. You can choose it, and I would tell you, experiment, because you may like it better if it's a thinner batter because it comes out different. Every time you do it, it comes out different. In this, you also add 2 slightly heaped tablespoons of psyllium husks, 2 slightly heaped tablespoons of ground linseed. So it's the same principle with all of these. You've got your linseed and your psyllium that's adding that thickening to it. You're putting some salt in there, and you can have olive oil in there if you want to. Whisk to mix together starter and water. Add rest of ingredients and combine well. Mix with a hand whisk for about 30 to 60 seconds. Alternatively, it can be placed in an electric mixer, a Thermomix, or mixing with a dough hook and mix for 10 minutes, but it still works without the 10 minutes of mixing. When I originally did this and got this sourdough culture, I went online and I was paid quite a bit of money to learn this sourdough bread making. And I had this culture sent to me by mail, which was fine. Everything worked well. But she put the mix in a Thermomix, and she mixed it for 10 minutes. you know what? After I've done it for so long, I've done it so often, I think you don't need to do that. It's just adds some extra work to it and really didn't change anything. So you don't need to do it. You can do it like I'm showing you here. But you could if you wanted to. Add it to the with a dough hook and mix it for 10 minutes. Place in a glass bowl, add a lid, but do not seal the bowl. Now what I did is I put all that mixture and I put it in here. Now this is my other bowl, which I haven't. It's just the one I've got. And it's in there. And this is another one. It doesn't have a lid that seals tight. But it does seal to a point. Okay? Allow it to breathe. Let it rise on the bench for 4 to 5 hours. This is now ready to use. See, it's got to rise first. Okay? So let's say I've put this on the bench. I've allowed it to rise for 4 to 5 hours. Then I'm going to use it. And I'll show you how I use it in a minute. You can use it 2 ways. One is flat bread or one is a loaf of bread. If I was putting it in a loaf of bread, I would actually put it in a bread tin. I wouldn't put it in here. I'd put it straight in the tin, ready to bake. Okay, this is now ready to use. Then place the mixture in the fridge. Use a small part of this. Okay, what do I do here? Add a lid, but do not seal the bowl. Allow it to breathe, because this is using for flat bread. Let rise on the bench. It's now ready to use. Then place the mixture in the fridge. Okay, so when I'm finished this, after it's finished rising, I keep this in the fridge all the time. So it does its initial 4 to 5 hours on the bench, and then it's in the fridge. Use a smaller part of this mixture, about 1 to 2 tablespoons or as much as you want, and place in a sandwich press to cook freshly every time you want to make it up. You may press down the sandwich press to make it thinner for flatbreads. The rest of this uncooked mixture, go back in the fridge. Once again, it keeps in the fridge. You can use this as a pizza base. This is an excellent pizza base. Or you can add sultanas or dried fruit and spices, or for a fruit version, and cook in a sandwich press or individual muffin tins. The dried fruit can be added before the first 4 to 5 hours rise, or a smaller amount of dried fruit can be added each time you want to do it. So you don't have to put the fruit in here. You can just mix it up in your hand just before you cook it. A loaf of bread, for this you will need to use the thicker consistency. It doesn't need to be as runny. Rise a blind tin allow it to rise for about 3 to 4 hours. It will be faster in the hot weather. And then it can be baked in the oven before it is risen completely. About 1 hour or until all baked or well baked. Now, I've actually add to this, and this is the better way to do it, allow it to rise on the bench for maybe 3 to 4 hours. Then pop your mixture in the fridge overnight, and then bake it first thing in the morning, and you have a fantastic loaf of bread. I found out that by accident, because I was doing sourdough, and I thought, I haven't got time to bake this, so I just popped it in the fridge. It held it, and then in the morning I came back and I baked it early in the morning, and it came out beautifully. So what I'm going to show you how to do is do it in a sandwich press. And what I've got here is this is a Breville sandwich press. It's a 4. But what I do is, because it's got Teflon on it, so what I do is I just use some baking paper. I fold it in half like this, and I cook my flatbreads in between the paper. I'll pop that in there, and I'll put the flatbreads in there in a minute, and I'll put it in between the paper. So what I do is I just get a spoon of this out. Can you see how thick it is? I'll just touch it with my hand. See how thick it is? Now you can, I can actually roll it to get it quite nice. I'll let it just warm up a little. Look, I've actually done it so often. I've put it in cold and it still works. I put it in hot, it still works. So I'm going to just cook some of these. You can have them. I'll put 4 of them in at the moment. And because it previously rose on the bench, it doesn't need to rise again. So I'm ready. Let's just say I want to have one of these piece of flat bread for lunch. And you know what gluten-free bread is if you have it and you make it ahead of time. It just, as I said, it tastes like cardboard. So I'm just going to let that in there. And what I do often is and I have little spaces, like I've got some spatula, some of the wooden part of the spatulas that's broken or something like that, and I've just cut them in half, and I just put them in there so I can just press this down and I can get a nice even, and then I take the wooden bits out. I can put it down a little bit more. Can you see there? They're nice. And you can have them really thin or you can have them up a little bit higher, but that's the flatbread. Now, if I'm not going to use this, I will just put the lid, pop that back in the fridge. Next day, I want to have one slice. All I do is get my sandwich press out, maybe put one slice in or 2 slices or whatever I want to have. And so each time I use it, now that will last like this in the fridge for at least a week. And it's ideal because it's really nice. I usually got into the habit of making it up once a week, just the way it was. So any questions on the sourdough? Yes, we've got some questions here, Mr. Man. Microphone man.
Is that the one that you can add the salt and the garlic and
No,
herbs?
that was the focaccia. That was different.
Yeah.
But you could do that to this. There's no rule. I've tried it, but the other one is lighter and nicer. Okay, that's different. Okay.
My question was just when you're feeding the sourdough plant, you've got one part of flour and one part water, but what would you suggest, like a tablespoon of each, or what quantity do you actually pop in when you're feeding it?
When is that? Where is that one?
Just down below in number 1, normal feeding ratio.
Is equal, just equal, one part of equal. So if you want to feed it up, I would feed it up with, depends how much you want to feed up, because sometimes it's like I've fed up, want to make up 4 loaves of bread.
Oh,
And I've just got to realise that I've got to have 4 loaves of, how much starter do I need? I've measured it out. I've got demonstration for 70 people. I've got to have starter for 70 people. And so I just know that if I've got to have starter for 70 people, I need to put maybe, I have to have in weight 2 kilograms of flour and 2 litres of water or something like that. That's what I work out. That's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about, the ratio.
Yeah, I get it.
When you're going through there, most of them says 1 cup of buckwheat flour, 1 cup of water. The other one says 1.5. Down the second one, I said it 1.5 to 1.5 cups of water to 1.5. I prefer myself the thicker batch. I've done both. I prefer the thicker batch, but you don't have to have it. You can have a thinner batch because you get a thinner, finer flatbread. And if you were going to put the oil in, which is optional, you can get it, and it's a little bit less rigid because it's not stiff. You can have it a little bit supple. Yes, Wendy?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. I endorse everything Kaye has said. She gave me a starter mixture, it must have been 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember when I came up once. And I've been using the same starter mixture ever since then. And I have a routine every Sunday morning. I will make my new starter dough and put in let it rise, and then put in the freezer, and the fridge I mean. And I don't eat, I have about 2 flat cakes a week because my husband doesn't eat it, so I've actually reduced the amounts, just enough for me.
Yeah.
And I'll have 2 during the week, and then on every Sunday I make it. And I was going to say something else. It's highly significant. come back, let the fuzz clear. Anyway,
I'm actually glad you said that, because if you're living alone, this would be too much starter.
yes.
That's too much. So you need to make a smaller ratio. That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
Stephen. Have a smaller ratio. Basically, it's 1-to-1.
Yeah, and I know the other thing was that I actually found the buckwheat starter was too strong a flavour.
Yep.
So I use the buckwheat for the starter, but when I make my flatbread, I will use half buckwheat and half besan flour, and that takes out the strong flavour.
Yeah.
It's really nice. And I found also, because I'm away all of this week, it's going to last me.
See that?
Oh yeah, look at that. It will last a good 9 days. I've been stretching it when I go away. I see how long it's going to last and hope it's still there when I get back. But 9 days I've found it'll last, at least.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'll cook this all up. We'll have that for lunch.
And I'll tell you what's really, really yummy. My favourite, I'll have a big one. I don't do little ones like that. I'll have a big pancake, and I will spread it with nut butter, almond butter, a drizzle of maple syrup, a sprinkle of pepita and sunflower seeds, and then I'll put on a finely chopped fruit salad and 3 dollops of yogurt and a sprinkle of slaps chia, and it's the best breakfast. And then for a savoury with a cup of soup or something, I'll do a savoury version where I'll spread it with avocado and hummus, and then I'll top it with just chopped green salad, tomato, capsicum, cucumber, whatever you want to put on it, and then you put a layer of cooked lentils. Yum!
I've just got one more question, Kaye. Can the plant actually die?
Yes, if you don't feed it.
Don't feed it.
Don't
Yeah.
feed it, and also you have to make sure that it's not airtight. It needs to breathe a little bit. Now, if you're going away for a long time, and let's say you were going away for 2 months, 3 months, what you do is you make this mixture very thick, and you don't allow it to rise on the bench at all. You mix it up straight away with your sugar. You put it straight in the fridge, and it's quite a thick mixture, and it'll last. But to get it back to life, and I've been away a bit and I haven't used it much, so it's not as virulent as I can get it to be. So to sharpen it up, give it a little bit of food, maybe a bit more sugar. One of the classes I did, one of the ladies, she said she doesn't know what she did, but she said she was following the instructions, and she said she put 1 cup of sugar in the starter, and she said it just went all over the bench. It just is so, see, it feeds on sugar. And she said it just came up everywhere. It was just leaking out everywhere on the bench. And she came back and
You
said,
can put it also in the freezer if you
Yes.
go away for a long time.
Yes.
Put it in the freezer.
yes. So you'd need to put it in but when you get it out of your freezer, you've got to activate it to get it working again. Okay. And that's what we need to do. See, how many times I share this with people and they really, they take it home and they just don't know what to do with it. Now, if anybody wants one of these, we can give you a starter. Hands up those who would like a starter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any starters back there? 8. Do you want a starter? 9. You're not going to do very good. This is... Hands up those who want a starter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I've got 10 starters here. Okay, so that's fine. I can organise that for you. And I can bring that in, hopefully. What I'll do is we'll put them in the fridge here, and it's up to you to come and pick it up. Or you can take it back where you're staying. Hopefully, is that easy? I think that might be easier, I think. But you've got to remember to take it home. And I bet anything someone forgets it. No, but they are really nice. They're just nice flatbread. And so nice with hummus, like you said. And if you, as I said, you can have them thicker or thinner or whatever. How's this going? I think that should be nearly ready. What time have we got?
The time is
Time's up. Yeah, I think we'll put this in. So what I'll do is I'll get this in. Can you see that? Now, I like putting, I've just got a little thing, I like putting sesame seeds over the top, and I don't have any with me. So I've got sesame seeds at home, but I just, in a hurry, I couldn't find them. My bottle was out, so I knew I've got some extra ones there, but I just couldn't find them in a hurry.
Would you like me to ask if they've got any in the kitchen?
Yes, that'd be nice. Thank you. So this is the gluten-free bread. I'll just make it. I've got a spatula here. And what I usually do when I get here, I get a little bit of water that shouldn't be too hot, and just dip it on my, get a wet hand like that, and just press it down. And that the wet that I've got on my hand is enough to get the seeds to stick to the dough. There you, thank you. I'm pretty sure Bernice would have some out there. She's got nearly everything out there, so. She is so efficient and organised with this. Oh, I just love working with her. As you can see there. And I just sprinkle a few on the top. And that's now I'll let that rise for possibly 10 minutes or so. And then I'll bake it for about an hour. I just pat them down a little bit. Okay. Now. Okay, we were doing that's better. See, they come out all sizes, but if you were really careful, if you wanted to be exact, I've got some scoops, some ice cream scoops. They're all different sizes, so I try to get them like much more uniform in size. And sometimes what I do is when I cook them like this, I will actually sprinkle extra salt on them. I really like that, and it's really nice. Yeah. And then sometimes what I do also is just in this little mixture like this, I'll just put just maybe a tablespoon or so of my sultanas or whatever, my fruit, and then I'll cook them. They tend to get, cooks quicker because I think it's the the sugar content of the fruit. And I've got just enough for another batch. I would say, 4 minutes. You can have them a little bit less because they're a bit, I find there that when I'm using the paper, I can check, because if I didn't have that paper, I wouldn't be able to do that because they're sticking to the plate. So I can just see how thick they are. But normally, as I said, I've got those little spaces or those little bits of wood that I put in. I just bring them down exactly. I know. I press them down, and then I take the spaces off, and I just put them back in my drawer. Okay, so we got 10 minutes before that goes in the oven, and we're almost there. We're pretty much finished. Have we got any more questions before we finish? Yes? Yes?
With normal sourdough, with normal flour, you normally scar the top of it for the steam to escape.
Just hold on.
When you're making normal sourdough with normal flour,
Yep.
Before you put it in the oven, you normally score the top of it.
Yeah, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It doesn't seem to make
okay,
much
doesn't
difference.
Make a difference.
No, not
Yep,
much difference.
That's all right.
Yes, sir. I'll just roll these up and get them ready because that's my last lot, and then we can...
I'll just have one question too, Kaye.
Yes.
Is there much difference between baking paper and Teflon on health sides of things?
Now you're asking me the hard questions, Stephen. I am wondering myself, because a lot of the baking papers I think are better than Teflon, but a lot of the baking papers are impregnated with whatever. I don't know what they're impregnating because they're like non-stick in a way, aren't they? I don't know. That's why I've gone to this one. This is a greener one, brown baking paper. I just used that one. I don't know. Yeah, it's like it's a wholemeal baking paper. I don't know 100% sure. I like to think it's better, but quite frankly, it's just the better option. But I can remember when my mother used to bake, she would actually literally have brown paper, real literal, and it was no non-stick, she had to grease it. Do you remember that? Okay, so they're ready to go, and that'd be my last lot. Okay, so I just think we'll just finish off there, and we can have a break, and we'll come back then, and we can start off. We'll start off on the detox one because that's a quicker one, and I will do the detox one. We'll come back at. Only got a couple minutes. I'll need to start at 1:15, so we'll do the detox talk. Okay, thank you.